All right, so just not as a reminder, but so we all know and why the decisions we made today to make our goals for 2019 is the mission statement, which is our mission is to peacefully support and defend the original intent of the Constitution through positive actions that support limited government governed by the people. We support constitutional law enforcement and defend the rights of all Americans regardless of race, religion, gender, or political affiliation. You know, we all developed that as a group. That's what we'll continue with our mission statement here on forward. Community outreach. We've all agreed that community outreach is something that we all need to focus on a lot more this year, starting in our own communities. And since we are several groups from several different states, now we have that network to support each other if there's a lack in one community versus another. We can bring in different ideas, we share different ideas, we can reach out to each other for extra support as needed. For example, developing also a mutual aid network within ourselves and other groups like us that are not necessarily on the right or the left either, straight down the middle like we are. Developing a huge mutual aid network between different groups of people brings us all together, because we all know that in disaster time, everything else, then people throw their hands up and look at each other as people and not as a political one side or the other at that point. The fact of doing that and having it develop prior is going to help us when the time comes for the need. You know, setting up the communications between different groups in different states, you know, talking to them when something does happen. Inevitably it's going to happen. There is no, you know, if it happens, it's when it happens. To be able to do that with an open dialogue and a straight, open mind, because once again, it's for the people, it's not for anything else.
Speaking mostly to natural disaster.
Natural disaster on that one, correct. 2A building, Second Amendment building, within our communities and within the people that need the means to actually be able to protect themselves, not necessarily because they can't, but possibly because of where they live, their neighborhoods, anything of that nature. They may not have the capacity to be able to pay for training or pay to go out and properly buy the right things. They may not know what to do or how to go about it. That's where we can step in and help these other communities, especially communities where people, not by choice, have to live in some areas where, you know, that's what they can afford. You know, that's a reality this day and age. You know, we can't all live in that nice McMansion on the hill paying $3,000 a month for mortgage or rent. You know, we have to live where our means allow us to live at. So if we can help these people any way we can by getting out there and trying to share some of our experience, trying to share, you know, the basics of, you know, gun control, safety, how to break your weapon down, how to clean it, and keep moving forward from there. The thing is, a lot of people look at the Second Amendment as a bad thing. And most of the people look at it as a bad thing is mainly because they're not educated properly. Most of us in here were educated with a firearm at an early age. I've done it with my kids. At an early age, we started getting into it, you know, get the fundamentals down, continue to move forward. So with those three subjects, I'd definitely like some more input on how each group can help in those three areas. Floor's open to whoever wants to step forward first.
Got something? I just want to discuss with all of you the conversation Gary and I just had out in the hall, that the community outreach that we do has all to do and defined by the area that we live in. While there may be in an urban area, those of you that live in an urban area, certain categories of people that would be considered disenfranchised, marginalized, that need help and we can be available for. We really have to look at our own AOs, our own counties and the surrounding counties, and define who those people are in those counties, okay? We can't really target any particular group until we know the need of our own counties. So while, you know, for example, Andrew lives in an urban area, he may find, you know, certain minority groups, you know, Latinos and Black Americans that are in need, right? In my community, I'm one of the few Latinos that live in that community, but we do have some people that are very, you know, marginalized, very much in need of help and support by some of the things that we can do for them. So what I'm suggesting to everybody is to really take the time to assess the needs of your particular community and your particular area, your counties, and the regions that you're in.
On the mutual aid network, as far as our own backyards, we can start there first, and then we can spread it out to major disaster relief. But
Absolutely.
in our own backyards, I think we should all be working on forging relationships with our local government organizations that we can work with. Like the city that I live in, they actually volunteered to be a collection point for our Houston Drive. My wife works there, so I had a bit of an in, don't get me wrong, but I think any city, if your group is valid and respected, or you're growing that, you can use your local cities, your local organizations to help strengthen how you look in your community. So now we had news, you know, that the MDCRT and the city our fund drive for, you know, Houston disaster relief, and it worked really well for us. The city was happy to do it. They were happy to collect it, and then of course, you know, we had a huge truckload to take down because those that donated trusted donating it to the city rather than to just to us, which, you know, can be nefarious for some people. Oh, well, I'm gonna give it to you, who are you? So that anything we can do in conjunction, obviously working with our sheriff's department to be known by our sheriff's organizations. I have a 2A sheriff, Mike. Everyone's met him through the news, so he's easy to work with. But I mean, just thinking strengthen our relationships at home with the agencies that we can use, that we can help and they can help us, will also help our footprint.
So you're talking about like on the city council side, county government within your district?
Whoever's available to work with. I live right in the city, so I was easy for me to go to the city. Easy to go there, and it was great. You know, but you may not have that. You know, it may have to be a county,
Right.
Based on where you live. You gotta, like I say, you gotta work with what your AO offers. You know, so every one of us are gonna have an individual, but I think we all brainstorm out all these ideas. There's bits and pieces of every idea we can all utilize. May not be the same for all of us. We're not gonna get the same opportunities or the same abilities in our AOs, but individually, pieces of each one will work for all of us.
I think as far as the mutual aid network goes, setting it up early ahead of time, before disaster actually strikes, reaching out to people, forming those bonds, is probably more important, or the most important thing that you can do, because when this happens, everybody's scrambling. What I've tried to discuss with my organization is, you know, we ran a warehouse last year, and as always, it was a few people doing it, not the whole, for whatever reason. And it's extremely time consuming, and the manpower, the hours that went into it in that handful of people was devastating to their lives, mine included. So our goal is to find somebody that's doing this. Why reinvent the wheel? If there's an organization that's already done this last year, the year before, why do we need to do it on our own? We would be better off offering our manpower, our assistance to those people, so that we supplement what they already have. You know, and we delivered a ton of food all over a bunch of states, really worked our ass off, and back home at that warehouse where the food was coming in, it was just a couple people that were there most of the time. So maybe your individual groups don't have the ability to do something alone, but don't let that stop you from reaching out to somebody. And no, it doesn't matter what group it is. If they're willing to let you come in and provide the manpower, then go for it, because you know you're not helping anybody if you're not actually doing something. But setting those relationships up now before everything happens is key.
It's crucial. It's
Yeah.
absolutely crucial. And I agree with you. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I, with my groups, since we're all separate groups here, with my group, I want to focus on what our strength was and be able to work with the group to say, hey, you know what? I can come down, I can run a warehouse, and I can distribute supplies all day long. You know, I'll have some of my people with me, get me some more drivers with trailers, and let's keep putting this out to where we can get it going. You guys ran a warehouse, you know, you're effective doing that, finding somebody else to be able to come in and be able to monitor the supplies that are coming in and going out to allow you to actually get the deliveries done.
Right.
Now we're speeding the process up.
Real quick suggestion in terms of the disaster relief effort and the fact that we are probably more likely, our assets are manpower over facilities and equipment. If our assets are manpower, we may actually want to consider suggestive, again, because that's what we are as an advisory committee, suggestive that all members that want to participate in disaster relief should consider getting their cert.
Absolutely.
That's what we're doing that in PA. We're getting all our guys up here. their
And
FEMA
obviously
certs.
what that does is that it gets us beyond that line that FEMA says, no, you can't come over here.
Right.
So we can move deeper into the areas that are needed.
Utilize the government to work against government. To get certs, I agree. It's something we started last year with the help of Lauren, got it kicked off for
Yep.
us.
That's right, you guys did that last year.
Yep, and I really am adamant about pushing that, and the more certs you get, the more valuable you become on the ground to be able to get through these blockades, to be able to do even more and be more effective with it.
It gives you access to a lot of their resources too. You know, a lot of their resources that we otherwise wouldn't get access to.
Now, I'm not saying I wanna work with
As far
FEMA
as
Red Cross.
delivery systems and stuff like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
There are obviously areas that they don't get to,
Yep.
for whatever reason, and that still need help.
yes, absolutely. And that was seen in Florida and North Carolina both. Weeks after the storms hit, there were still communities where nobody was, you know,
Didn't have anything.
yeah, didn't have anything, they've never seen anybody. Houston had it, you know, not just that, you're also talking about, you know, people being left pretty much stranded. They're stuck, they can't get out. You know, why? Because people left and didn't really care. And that's where, you know, we can come in to make that difference is, you know, get the cert qualifications. Very good point.
That's what we saw in that little town in Georgia.
Yeah.
To the extreme that they were painting City Hall.
Yeah.
They had workers painting the woodwork on City Hall in the midst of a disaster. They didn't take those bodies to help the community, they used them to paint a building. I mean, so this is how.
Used who to paint the building?
Government
Oh,
employees,
government,
the city employees or the village employees were painting a building. There was people in their houses that could not get to town because of trees in the road, people without food and water, and these guys are painting a building. Beyond dumbfounded, just
Well,
beyond
the
dumbfounded.
town square around the city hall or city council, the roofs were completely collapsed. I mean, no power. I mean, it was just utter
Yeah.
chaos. Unbelievable.
And up there.
Yeah, and up
with
there
the
just
brush.
painting away.
All right, anybody else on any three topics? We got a lot of mouths.
I got one more thing to go with. On the 2A building, and this is stream of conscious now, I mean, there's no pre-thought on this. Is it very involved to get your NRA basic instructor certification?
No, it isn't.
Well, my suggestion would be is if we want to go out and do some training, I think we should probably have it back with a certification to do the training. So maybe we should consider getting our NRA basic
Yeah,
instructor,
I have guys in my unit who are,
you know.
NRA certified.
You know, just like getting our
so
ham
it's
radio
pretty
license,
important.
just another nice thing to have.
Especially when you're talking about, you know, you start talking about instructing people, you know what I mean? Because then you're talking about insurance liabilities.
Thank you.
There's a lot of stuff that comes into play. It's not just taking somebody out to a range and just letting them dump lead.
Right.
And
And
there's
there's a lot of things that gotta be taken into consideration legally, so.
Anything we can do an official, and I say official being having certification,
Yeah,
having
sure.
training, having something on paper that says you are a quote-unquote expert, as it were, is better for us to consider in going forward on that.
I want to touch on the community outreach, community building. For me, that's important. That's where we need to be out. We need to have town hall meetings, and we need to be open to everybody, as we all are with our groups now. Every one of our groups has got diversity in it, of all different, styles. So when we do these town hall meetings, they need to be open, and we need to discuss the real problems within those communities. That's where things get sidetracked and tend to lose focus. And people are smart. If they know you're in there trying to push a certain agenda, you're not really focusing what you say you're doing, which is you're wanting to find out how you can help in that community, they're gonna blow you off. That's something we really need to focus on, how to properly be able to help in our communities. In all of us, all of our states, we have people live in different counties. We should be appointing one person for whoever lives in that county as the head person to take that up in their county. Us as leadership, we should be going to those meetings as well. Even if it's not in our county, we should still be attending those meetings to make sure, we're getting what we need feedback-wise. Once again, this is all about bringing the people back together again with no political right, left, or anything else. We're not political lines at all. This is about the real issues with, real people.
So if it's not political, town hall meeting is gonna be for what purpose?
To find out what's going on with people in the community. We want to find out, hey,
So it's a community organization function?
yes,
Okay.
Almost like an outreach, kind of.
Is that the beginning intent, or is that something like, will we try to introduce constitutional values later on in the community? Or are we just trying to get the attention of people, say, in doing a medical class, or a bug out bag class? Something that will grab their attention versus saying, this is what we believe, just kind of broad sliding.
no, I think, it comes down to how many times a day we heard the word trust.
Yeah.
100 times a day. And it comes down to, the people are gonna have to trust you before they really open up to you and to allow you into their community, and the only way that's done is through conversation. We have to have constructive conversation with these people. To me, yes, the Constitution, constitutionalist, okay? I'm not gonna bring it up off the bat, I'm not gonna force it on them or anything. I wanna really know what the issue is within the community, and is there some way we can help? Is there some way we can help that, say we've got elderly people, my town in particular, there's a section that's got a lot of elderly people.
Need the sidewalks cleared.
Exactly. How are you doing? What's the issue? Well, these sidewalks are always iced over when it snows. Nobody can shovel it because, they can't get out there and do it. The simple things.
Well, simple, those who are in the country, this may not apply to, those who are in the burbs, you got HOAs. Asked to speak to an HOA about their community safety.
It's
Put a
just,
presentation together to help with the community safety. I'm sure they've had them, but that introduces you to a group of people who could introduce you to it. The network then starts. You start at the small level and build the network piece at a time, but at the very bottom, the references become the important thing. They're sending you to the next person.
You can't help anybody if you're not in touch with people.
Right.
correct. And
We had
that's-
people come to us in a neighboring town, cause a guy needed a ramp built.
Yeah.
And they came to Lightfoot and said, can you do this? Because we've had the town meetings, we're on the town Facebook page, and we put that we're out there. And the bug out bag was our icebreaker at that meeting to get people to come and then discuss who we are and what we do to change what they think, we are. So, and that all came about after the disaster relief stuff, so it just
So
it all played in
Helping
together.
with that
Oh,
just
oh, yeah,
snowballed it out.
yeah.
Go out and teach people FEMA has a guideline for basic disaster preparation. If you go out to a HOA, homeowner association, do a presentation on that. I mean, you're not you're not reinventing the wheel, you're teaching something that already exists.
Right.
And a lot of these people may not have had exposure to it. They might not even think, well, do I need water? What if the power goes out for a week? You got whole neighborhoods that don't think about that. They're too busy in their entrenched worlds, and that's a great help to a community. Just to open their eyes. You're not even taking anything on that's
Massive.
yeah.
How many of you guys have actually done town halls? Okay. We've been running them in New York for about 5 years. And,
Yeah, we've talked about that, pick your brain on that.
yeah, and I gotta tell you, it's never void of politics. It's never void.
Oh, no, I
E-
expect,
Even if I'm doing a 72-hour bag, you know, or a basic hand-to-hand combat, free to the community, or if I'm doing basic medical or basic comm to the community, politics always becomes an issue in it because they're there because of the politics that care about them or want to control them more specifically.
I mean, in the words of a friend that I know, I'm not there to try to recruit anybody. You know, I want to make sure that, you know, that's a clear message that, hey, I'm not here trying to recruit you or convert you. You know, but yeah, I'm sure politics comes about almost every time you have a community.
So here's my suggestion with that piece of experience that we're talking about right now. In order to better that community, that through those community, we've always called them public meetings, through the public meetings, through your town halls, whatever you want to call them, in training, in giving in and sharing information with the local community, we're able to assess who's actually going to be willing to work. We're also able to assess what the specific issues and needs are of that community. And what we're doing in that process is actually developing an actual grassroots organization, a team, a movement within that community of people that may be willing to change the culture of that particular community through political activism. So I don't really think it's something that we can separate, especially if it's about being proactive in the community. In every community, you know, my particular community has its needs. Your particular community has its needs. And those needs, unfortunately, are often addressed through the local politics of that community.
They are.
Can you mitigate some of that by topic choice? I mean, I realize you gotta teach a broad spectrum of topics, but can you mitigate some of it by managing your topic?
If you know the needs of your area, right, I would say absolutely. So let's say I live in a flood zone. I'm on the high end of a flood zone. Our mountains flood almost every year. That flooding turns out to be anywhere from a minimal effect to our feeder streams, to our larger rivers that those feeder streams feed into, to literally destroying towns. No one ever pays attention to our town destruction because it is very, very low income. No one ever pays any attention to it. So how do we prepare, you know, for that? Issues that may be specific to that particular region might be issues that we can do as public forums
Yeah.
or town hall
That
meetings.
don't necessarily, I mean, you can't not invoke it, but that don't necessarily invoke the political spectrum into the conversation.
Well, it does, because if that area is inadequately protected from a natural disaster, that's a political issue.
True, okay.
That becomes a political issue.
Gotcha.
Anybody else on that?
Nope.
All right, so go back to the mutual aid thing one more time. We're several different groups in here from several different states. With that said, we've got other groups willing to work with us as well. And
Other groups outside of the groups that are here,
outside of the groups that are here, there are other groups that want to work together because, you know, we all realize that, you know, nobody wants to work with FEMA or Red Cross. I'm gonna say, nobody. And I'll be the biggest one that stands there and says, I do not wanna work with them.
¿por qué? ¿Por qué?
And a lot of us don't, you know, everybody laughs, but we all know it's the truth. Have you ever gotten stuck with 5 pallets of MREs and people are looking at you like, I don't want any more MREs? It's a bad situation.
I'll take those MREs.
You can have them.
You're
take those
never
MREs.
stuck as long as
You
we're
need to
around.
gain some weight anyway.
Save me the chili mac.
How do we start developing that network? I think each one of us in here, we start reaching out to a group that we know of. And we start trying to make that connection so we can start building that network and we get a communication network developed well prior to the season hitting. You know, I say everybody says the season starts in August. You know, that's just a map thing. A big storm could come through earlier in August and still hit. We've got time right now, we're able to plan that out.
We have our floods coming up this month,
Exactly.
February.
Got a storm going on right now.
We got a storm going on right now.
So I'm gonna challenge every group that's present here today, and we'll put the challenge out to the ones that are not, that everybody needs to reach out and make a contact. And we need to make a solid contact with those that are willing to jump into the fight and help when the time comes.
And on that, I know we've gone over a bunch of stuff today, and, you know, we all got a lot to think about. But our guests being who they were, you know, there's us being considered the political right, even though, you know, we view ourselves as a non-political entity. It's real important that you guys reach out to these groups, you know, and a lot of them are gonna basically tell you to shove off, you know, but you're gonna find one who won't.
Yeah, you never know.
You know, and like I found one who won't. And now I've got a contact, you know, inside of the city that, you know, before today, we had no access to. You know, so that it's really important, and by doing that, and doing that on a small level, that'll spread.
Network.
You know, and then that's where you start taking all these mouthpieces on social media out of the equation. You know, you start taking them out of the equation, the fog starts to clear. Now I can start to see, and after some of the conversations we've had today, now I can start to see who I can talk to, who I can count on, you know, who is thinking the same way I am. You know, and as we've seen clearly dictated, there are groups on the left who think like we do. And that's something extremely important that we should all be focusing on, you know, going forward. Of course, we all got a ton of stuff we gotta focus on, unquestionably. But I think that in itself needs to be at the forefront of what we're doing this year.
And don't just reach out. Be there.
Yeah,
Be present.
more importantly,
Because
be there. Be
talk
there,
is
you know.
cheap.
If they
Talk
put the
is
call
cheap.
out to you, don't come up with excuses. You know, if you can't be there, then damn sure make sure some of your people are there.
Right.
What you do speaks so loudly that what you say, I can't hear.
Exactly.
Well, with that being said, we know that there's groups on the right that we can't count on.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. We're done with all
Probably
that.
more than not, more than not.
An understatement.
I was just gonna say, did that need to be said?
Yes.
But, I mean,
Yeah,
but
yeah, I think it did, yeah.
if we start distancing ourselves, and look, I want unity as much as the next guy, but at the end of the day, I mean, we gotta be realistic. And
Unity with the right
we're gonna have to start distancing ourselves from the like I said, the faceless mouthpieces that spew stuff day in and day out on social media.
And you gotta have standards.
Yeah, and we gotta live up to them. That's important.
You gotta have standards.
That's a big one.
We just had a conversation about the standards when we were standing here talking. So I'll give that one to you. Go ahead.
Which standards in particular are we talking about right now?
About the standards and developing these relationships with the community and with other groups that are like-minded, but not necessarily always on the same page. Those standards, you know, it's not that we're gonna, you know, bend over and accept anybody, because that's not who ERAM is.
No, there's gonna have to be, it's gonna have to be a give and take, you know, and it's gonna be a slow process. So I understand where George came from earlier, when he kind of played the elephant in the room and said, hey, you know, maybe we're not just jumping right into bed together, you know what I mean? This was kind of an introductory meeting for us to, you know, kind of get to know these guys and hear their side of things, and I can't speak for any of you, but I can speak for myself when I say I spent the majority of this meeting slack-jawed. And that's saying something coming from me. I can pretty much talk about anything, you know, and for a long time.
But that
But
also,
listening to what these guys were saying, you know, I'd like to bring up a conversation Gary and I had, and I thought that myself and one of the guys were gonna be rolling around on the floor within 5 minutes of meeting each other. Right, me being the lovable sociopath that I am. But I see a lot in the way that he handles things and the way he presents himself. It's very similar to the way I handle things, you know, and so listening to the things he was saying, you know, I was kind of forced to look at myself and look at how I've handled certain situations and what was wrong and what was right about it. So it was an eye-opening situation, you know what I mean, for me. I learned a lot.
oh yeah.
I mean, like I said, generally, you guys all know me, you've all trained with me, you know that I like to talk, but today I wanted to listen, and I'm glad I did. You know,
Thank you.
Go ahead, George.
I'm gonna beat you with that guy.
So the SOPs for who we work with, you know, in my thinking, in my estimation, and in my experience, are fairly simple. First and foremost, we want people that are emotionally balanced, which some of us won't qualify for that. We want people that are intelligent, reasonable thinkers, okay? And also people that are willing to do the work, put their boots on the ground, get out there, get their hands dirty, and make sure that they're going to function. If we don't find those kinds of people, okay, what we wind up with is becoming a social media group.
Yep.
At that point, and we want to stay away from that. So, you know, even though we find people that are going to be like-minded, regardless of where they fall in the political spectrum, they might be like-minded in terms of what we want to do in the community. We have to make sure that we take our time getting to the point where we can really mutually permit ourselves to be in a trusting relationship so that we can become effective on the community level. Okay, I think every single one of you at one point or another have rushed a relationship with a new member,
Oh, yeah.
and it's gone south on you really quick because you rushed it, right? We want to try to avoid that so we don't waste our time, because I know for a fact that that's what you guys felt like you did after that member went south, like you wasted your time. So, you know, emotionally balanced, intelligent, reasonable thinker, and somebody that's willing to do something. I call somebody like that an organizer, or, you know, somebody that's just a boot on the ground. And, you know, if you can find an organizer, somebody that can organize events, you have just found gold. That person is gold. If they can organize an event, how many of you guys have organized events?
Cool.
Right? It's difficult. It takes a lot of time. But if you find somebody that's willing to do that, that's a very, very key person. They are, while, you know, very important, the boots on the ground, we need more of the boots on the ground than those one or two organizers that you have. So we can categorize the people that we bring into the fold as a boot, you know, somebody that's willing to get the grunt work done, and that should be every single one of us. We lead by example. We can't say, all right, well, you know, they're just gonna do the boot, and then, you know, you sit back and watch it happen. Hell no. You gotta get your hands dirty also. You know, and find those organizers, because if you find organizers, what you've just done is you've multiplied yourself. Because if you've done one event and you've organized that event, now imagine having 1, 2, 3 more people that are capable of doing that. Now you're running 4 events. So, you know, I look at it as being fairly simple. You know, we want people that have the same qualities that we have. Take it slow in developing that relationship with that particular person. Let them earn their way through it, you know, let them earn their way through it. How many of you guys have assigned a task to somebody because you felt that they were ready for it, that they were gung-ho, and they just weren't? You know, and whose fault is that?
Ours.
It's ours. It's not their fault, you know, they just weren't ready for it. That's our fault. So, you know, in terms of SOPs, I don't necessarily like to dictate to our battalions in New York. You know, we have our standards, but each of the battalions go about doing their stuff in their own way. And, you know, we have to give each other that kind of latitude because his AO is not my AO. My AO and his AO is not his AO. So we have to be, you know, willing enough to, you know, let people function in the best patterns that they can.
Well, it just harkens back to what we were saying earlier about, you know, what he needs in his AO may not be what you need in your AO. You know, so I think that's a good, I think it's, that in that aspect, it's a good thing that the Lightfoot units are autonomous.
Yes. The structure of Lightfoot and the structure of ERAM, and one thing that we're pushing vehemently here in, not here, in New York, north in New York, is what's called home rule. It's a constitutional right in the New York State Constitution. And home rule basically acknowledges the fact that each of the counties, which is where the home rule resolution is being implemented, that each of the counties is in fact unique unto itself and has its own specific needs. And this particular resolution is addressing the economic needs of each of those particular counties. We have to function in that way too. We have to function in that way too. Each of the regions of New York is completely different. You go to New York City, you get one thing. You come to my neck of the woods, where the mountains are, it is not New York City. It is not. You go to the vineyard country. That's not my area, that's the vineyard country. You go to Western New York, you go to the North Country. Those are all different regions. And you know, as an advisory board, as an advisory organization, we have to be able to understand that the information we put out is as it's advice for all of the organizations involved, with us knowing that, okay, maybe those guys over there are going to do it completely different. Did I miss anything?
No, at that point can really twist what you're saying, because you're face to face with these people, you're handing them something in their hand, you're having a conversation. Grassroots is where we're going to be the most effective at getting the message out there, through the meetings, through seeing somebody at the store, having a conversation, through being active in the community. You see a wrong being done somewhere, you show up, you get involved. That's grassroots. Grassroots can work very effectively when we're using the grassroots system. You guys did a lot of grassroots, you know, when you were running for lieutenant governor.
Yep.
And, you know, that was just, and you had, I was surprised, man. I mean, with what you guys did with just grassroots on that campaign was, what did you see the most effective way on that grassroots? I guess that's my biggest question.
So, one was, probably the biggest was diversity, right? I mean, we had people of all ages. We literally had people who were just turning 18 and submitting their voter registration day, or their voter registration that day. Up to, one of our supporters was over 100 years old. Wow. People of all different ages, all different ethnic backgrounds. We went everywhere, you know, so we went into the super urban areas, and then we went to the most rural areas. I mean, we went to the areas that nobody's been in over 20 years because it was just so many square miles and so few people, it didn't make any sense. We showed up. We were there. We went into the communities. And then what we told people constantly was, you be you, let me be me, and let's not force our will on each other. Allow you to have your beliefs, whether that's left or right or anywhere in between, and I'll support that. I'll support your right to believe the way you do if you support the right to believe how I believe, and we agree not to force it on each other. And I think that not only is that going to help us build community relationships, but relationships with other groups that you might look at and at the surface think, yeah, maybe we don't agree. Well, you come together and you agree that, yeah, you have the right to be left. You have the right to be right. You have the right to be anywhere in the middle. Just don't force it on me. You find that you agree on almost everything else, as long as you respect each other. That's really what it comes down to, is respect.
So I know that you were suggesting flyers. Has anybody tried flyers?
Flyers?
Or,
Regular flyers for grassroots, just handing them out, going to your local gun store, your church, or wherever, and dropping off flyers for people to pick them up. You can do it in a lot of community centers. What I mean by that is like the rec centers. They always have, you go in a rec center and there's
Bulletin
big boards, got all these papers in there you're allowed to put in for free, allow people to pick them up.
Yeah, we did a trifold,
Yeah.
we did like a trifold pamphlet,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, we
And
did
that,
too,
that
just to
seemed
hand
to,
out.
it seemed to be pretty well received.
well, what
Yeah.
was on your pamphlet, like, what was your
The mission,
statement?
the mission statement, you know, a brief description of like the history
Mhm.
of the militia and as it relates, you know, throughout the years and whatnot. And then
Contact
kind of a
information.
real brief statement we had at the end, which was just kind of a real vanilla, generalized description of what we do.
Okay.
You know, and we didn't write it to, the way it was written was very specific. It wasn't written to for me to hand it to you and you to have no questions.
Right.
It was written so that you would
Would
read
have
it and have a bunch of questions,
Right.
you know, because then you establish that dialogue.
And how was the, you know, the feedback from handing those out?
Good. It was actually, it was pretty surprising. I mean, to say how much of that we got from,
Was
to
your
say how many
objective-
specific members we got from it, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, we have 17 battalions across the state.
Well, even
of
just to open
Pennsylvania,
up
so-
the conversation. you
Yeah,
know,
and that's what it is. I
Right.
mean, and of course, you gotta be, you know, respectively selective in where you're handing this stuff out at.
Right.
You know what I mean? You wanna start, of course, in the obvious places. But like I say, it initiates a conversation.
Yep.
And it is, those guys were stating earlier, and they made a good point, you know, we can't shove this down people's throats.
Sure.
You know, but if they come to us, we can't
Right.
not answer them.
Well, you know, and the irony of what you just said, you know, with our guest here earlier, our guest actually helped us develop those three things we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Correct.
You know, and that just shows you that, yeah, we think a whole lot alike on a lot of different subjects, a lot of different issues that are at hand. So yeah, I mean, flyers, I'm willing to give a try. I think something needs to be developed. It's gonna have to have keyword indicators within the first three sentences, or we're just gonna lose them
Yeah.
off the bat.
Well,
You
it
know,
sounds like you're trying to use the flyers primarily for recruiting. It seems like you
Or,
could
actually, I
adjust it to
Public awareness?
public
That's what I wanna
awareness.
do.
How
Yes.
can we help you? What kind of things do we do? What are we really good at? How do we get in and help different community areas?
Well, you can spark those
Who you gonna call
conversations
when?
too, you know, when just by handing them out, so.
yeah, I'm more, yeah, I wanna kinda use it as a recruitment tool to get people to the public meetings.
Yeah.
That's the way I wanna use it, you know.
I would bet money that if you used it as getting people to the meetings first and how we can help you first, that it would work as a recruitment tool better than if you catered it as a recruitment tool.
The evolution of the relationship, I think. would-
It's
Bring
evolution
it
of
together.
relationship, building the trust factor, getting them to,
This is what we do. We're not recruiting.
yeah.
Yeah. We're here to help, we're here to help you, we're not here to pick you up.
Right.
We're here to do for you.
Now,
Suggestion.
should you decide you wanna join up, that's a whole different story, you know, we can talk about that, but.
Go ahead.
The dissemination of information has changed in the time that we live in.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Fewer and fewer people are going to laundromats, okay, are going to rec centers. They're still going to convenience stores, so that might be a good spot to put a flyer if you have a flyer up. The majority of people, when they're not engaged in something else, have their eyes on their phones. That is the major source of information dissemination that's available to us right now. It's very possible to create social media events with the same purpose and the same intent as those flyers, with the same keywords, and then have those distributed digitally within a particular geographical area. If you think about the time that it takes to drive around let's say a 20-mile radius where you're going to be dropping flyers, plus the time for designing the flyers, plus the time for printing those flyers and the costs associated with that, plus the costs associated with gas, and then the person's time itself, which equates to dollars, because that person could be working, doing something else, right? It really is much cheaper on social media. If you have a group and you're willing to create an event and boost that event, that means buy advertising on Facebook, for those of you that don't know that, and you put $20 on that boost, you can now target where that boost is seen. So you can say, now, all I want is everybody in Delaware County, New York, to see this particular event, because we're going to be talking about flood management at our next public meeting. Delaware County. $20. Takes me, let's say, 5, 10, maybe 20 minutes to create that event. Takes me 5 minutes to boost it, and $20. If you have a small local group, everybody chips in $1, $2, $3. Now you can boost that, and it will literally tell you, depending upon the amount of money that you put into it and how long you're going to run that boost, what the reach will be on a daily basis. Anywhere from 100, plus thousands of people per day will literally potentially see that event. It's something that we've done regularly and has been effective. It does work. And you'll get people that will not pass those bulletin boards seeing that, because the majority of us have our face planted in these phones all the time, right? Isn't that right? I mean, most of us do.
And you can take it a step further, where if you're gonna talk about a specific type of event, say it's flood awareness or something like that, you can say, yeah, everybody in my county who's given age range that's maybe home ownership, or you can mark off homeowners, and then you can mark off people who watch the news regularly, and you can actually start to target and create, and this starts to go down the path of like actual marketing, but you build 3 to 4 profiles of the type of person that you think is going to be interested in what you're going to talk about in that meeting, and you market directly to them. That way the people who don't care aren't seeing it, and the people who are going to show up and are going to be active, and it's not like an exact science, I'm not trying to make it sound so easy, but you can actually go in there and actually turn some dials and make it match the content that you're going to give them, try to line it up with the type of person that wants that content. And that can go for anything. So then maybe you change it, maybe next month it's not flood awareness, maybe it's canning, And so you go, check off people that are part of canning groups on Facebook in my area. I bet you find a couple people who not only show up and are interested in canning, but, oh, by the way, they maybe have some value and could teach people as well. And when people have something to contribute, they feel like a bought and vested interest, and that's what keeps them going.
So when you create this event, how do you set the demographic?
It'll ask you.
It's right in there.
Yeah, it'll ask you, area
Okay.
or location. So literally in what looks like a search bar, you would type in Delaware County, New York.
Right.
And then it gives you a selection, and you click Delaware County, New York, done.
Okay.
Right? And then when you go down to interests, right, homeowners, in the interest section, homeowners. And then whatever comes up, you select the one that you feel would be best for your event, done. Click on it, and then it's there. And then it'll ask you how much you want to put into this boost, right? And you select that boost. You've done a boost or two.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, and then the time frame of the boost. We talked earlier about the need for a propagandist, okay? Or marketing, right?
Right.
There's two things that you need to really consider when you're looking at this as a potential. One is called branding. Who are you? Who are we? Who is the group that's local, that's going to be available? You want that name to appear in front of that group as often as you can, okay? Because it takes, on an average, a person to see a name 16 times before they actually recognize it. So if I'm thinking about buying sporting equipment, right, for my studio, and there's a new company out there, I don't know who that company is. But if I've seen that name over and over, and I'm like, yeah, look, they got training shields. I can use those mitts for my studio, for my classes, right? And I see them over and over and over. When it's time for me to buy that,
Subconsciously, you already.
I've been branded.
Right.
Okay? So that's one thing that we would like to do for our particular groups. The other thing is what's called a call to action. In a call to action, we have this event coming up. All right? Reserve your spot. Space is limited. Reserve your spot. We have a small little location to do this. We can only really have 15, 20 people, 30 people in there at most. You know, so reserve your spot. Space is limited, you know? And what that does is that it gets people to act immediately. It's not branding, it's called a call to action. And you want to target people that are interested in that particular area. Flood management, in my area, is going to be huge. How to protect your family during a flood, you know? Something like that would be, you know, a call to action for that particular kind of event.
Now, I know the demographic is it's not going to be as big as, say, for social media, but there are some folks that do not do social media. How is a way that we can also include them in our idea of what we're having?
There's, what I find is that the people that are not on social media are predominantly older generations than us, okay? Some of them, a good portion of them actually have email accounts,
Yeah.
okay? Even fewer of them don't have email accounts. You know, they strictly rely on paper news. They go out and they still buy the newspaper. You know, they'll still watch the TV and get their news from those sources. They're not going to get it from an online source. It's a difficult question because buying an email list is expensive. I looked at getting 5,000 names for my area, for my business. It was going to cost me $400 for those 5,000 names.
Wow.
It must be cheaper to put an ad out in paper.
Well, I'll
So
say,
after this, George and I we've got class marketing your militia in the digital age. Sign up online and It's a call to action. We've only got a few spots left.
well, now being one of those who, I don't live on social media.
Yep.
I mean, I'm on our social media because I'm monitoring what we're talking about.
Right.
But I'm not a Facebooker, and my wife is, however. If something like that came up, I would at least get it from her, I guarantee it. cause she's on all that stuff and so you'll get some of them by osmosis, you know.
Word of mouth.
Yeah, like my wife would tell me if this kind of event came up in our area, she, hey, you wanna go to this?
Right.
So I would get it, I just may not get it first source.
So the time invested would probably be the best way would be on social media for the biggest reach.
Time for
Well,
calls.
ultimately, the best way is gonna be to hit every make and manner you can think of.
Well, that's
All of the
true,
above.
You know what I mean, all of the
Yeah.
above,
Yeah.
it's,
Well,
you
and-
know, if you're marketing to a certain, if you're marketing to a certain group, you know what I mean, and you have the ability to strictly market them through social media, well then great, you know what I mean, but like you said, there's people out there who don't do Facebook, they
Right.
don't do Instagram or Twitter,
Mhm.
you know, but that could be where the boots on the ground, here's a flyer thing,
Yeah.
you know, could help you out. So, I mean, it's like anything else, it's what, you're only gonna get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah.
So the more you put into it, the more you're gonna get out of
I
it.
just figured out what a hashtag was a couple of months ago.
Yeah. I still don't, I still.
Yeah, pound stuff
Hashtag
down.
is not the stretch
Shift
that goes
two,
over your
right?
sleeve.
Hashtag.
Our little boys all grown up.
All right, yeah, so now we've got some ways of how we can do this, and it's gonna be up to each of us as individual groups to take and run with that idea.
Write an action plan,
Mhm.
execute your action plan.
That's it. Write an action plan, execute your action plan, move it forward.
Adjust, redo, adjust,
Yes.
Yep.
redo.
You know, where ERAM can be the most effective from this day forward is by, as groups, coming together, working together, and focusing on our communities. That's gonna be bringing people together constantly,
Cross-party lines.
cross-party
Yeah,
lines.
cross-
correct.
Teaching
lines.
and encouraging that same thing.
Over
Concur to it.
and over. Mhm.
That really needs to be emphasized. I'm glad you brought that up again, because our effort is about the people. And it really needs to be made very, very clear in everything that we do. That, you know, we're not politically affiliated. And that really needs to be emphasized. I may be wrong, I may be naive, but I would think that that's a little more inviting for more people to be able to attend an event that has, that addresses some of the community concerns of that particular community itself.
Yeah, and that's why we're here today. We all came to these conclusions together, and that all three of those things revolve around one thing: community. It all revolves around community. It doesn't revolve around, I'm gonna run around through the woods looking cool in my clean tactical gear. No, we're talking about working in our communities, you know, and that's a lot of, you know, different thinking in here. But it is, and that's truly where ERAM can take and lead the way, is by focusing and working in our communities and being available for our sister groups when they need help in their community. We can go help out in their community.
And our reward is an FTX.
Yes.
That's how I look. You know, we're working hard, our reward is to go to the FTX.
Playtime,
Yes.
being tactical.
Unless you're the guy planning it.
Yeah, well,
But, you know,
it's a reward for all.
and building the mutual aid network with not just groups within ERAM, but with other groups like our guests that were here today. You know, building that mutual aid network to all work together and, you know, being proactive for the situation that's gonna come instead of reactive and running around in circles after the situation's already hit.
Right.
You know, we've all been there. We've all ran around in circles after something major's happened. You know, how much more effectively can we be if we're pre-planning and we're setting these networks up? So when it does happen, we can go, we make a phone call. If it hits North Carolina, we can make a phone call, say, hey, what kind of help you need? What do you need down there? Well, I need this, 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 and this. All right, well, I'm gonna send you 5 or 6 guys. They'll be down there within about 24 hours. You know,
I have a question on that. It just occurred to me, after we did Houston, we made the one run, and then we went back down to Carolina a year. Is there any way that we could standardize our approach to response such that we could maybe phase deliveries on a schedule? Like, I realize everything is fluid, I understand, so I get that. But in some structure where the event happens on, we'll say the 1st, just for example, well, by the 7th, we need to have the first delivery ready to go. By the 12th, we're gonna go for some ordered structure to phasing the movement of aid and support, so that maybe it's easier for when it does happen to plan against making it work. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, so with my experience this past year doing all those different disasters, you gotta figure the first 5 to 7 days, they're still in search and rescue, no doubt about it. And those first 5 to 7 days when we all need to be on the phone going, hey, you know what, let's start collecting supplies. We already know what the immediate needs are gonna be. I'm gonna tell you right now, water will not be an immediate need. You minimize the amount of water you're taking down there because the government's already shipping
Everybody brings it.
tons and tons of water.
We still have stuff left now.
Yeah,
Where
so.
the diapers, where the school supplies.
Yep, the school supplies came in great.
They work well.
Yeah, and that'll be down the road after the initial delivery, which is gonna be non-perishable foods. Socks are huge. Non-perishable socks,
Cleaning supplies.
cleaning supplies will be on that list.
Baby supplies.
Baby supplies are huge. Feminine hygiene products, that
Yes,
was
we should
very
have-
big.
We should have a list.
And it'll be an
We can do
AAR
one.
from
Yeah, I was
Florida.
gonna- Well, no, I mean,
I'll put it to everybody.
yeah, I was
Absolutely.
gonna say, everybody should have that
But
list.
standardize our response metric,
Right.
so that it, boom, boom.
Right, so the metric
goes to
would
work.
be, we know, okay, there's a storm coming in, it's gonna hit Wilmington in 3 days. All right, so effectively, now we know we got 10 days before we're hitting the road with loads of supplies going down.
Begin
We're-
phase 1 operations.
Yep, we're on the phone with our guy down in North Carolina saying, hey, we're loading up, we're looking to head out at this time. Our guy in North Carolina is gonna be the one that says, all right, stand by, make sure you know, and they're gonna help us plan a route in, so we're not getting diverted around 12 different places, so we can actually get there and be effective right on the ground as soon as we step out. The other big thing is, vehicles. Trucks with trailers is huge. We definitely could have moved so much more stuff if we had additional strength, trucks, and trailers.
Manpower.
That manpower, I mean, and it's huge. The people we don't want, I'm gonna tell you right now, the people we don't want are the first ones right off the bat go, I'll do it, but you need to pay my gas.
Yeah, no thanks.
We don't need them. We all know it's a sacrifice. We all know we're doing it, you know. Yeah, I got some of my fuel costs back, but it just went back into fuel again for another run.
Right.
That's all it did. I spent well over $1,600 in just fuel. And I think that's even light. I have to go back and look at my numbers. But I didn't go down there and say, hey, I need fuel money so I can keep making deliveries. Those are the people we gotta watch. You know, screening people that wanna volunteer is crucial because you will get some flake in there that wants to make it all about themselves. The other people we wanna watch, it's real simple. You look at their Facebook profile, if you see 100 selfies, guess what they're gonna do when they get to a disaster zone? That's all they're gonna be doing. They're gonna be taking more selfies. That's the kind of people we really don't want. But to answer your question, the matrix, that first 5 days after the storm's generally search and rescue. If it's a real big storm that can stretch out 10 to 12 days, we should be loading and preparing to deliver down with what we know is gonna be needed off the bat. When the people on the ground get down there, they can call back and say, hey, you know what, I've been down here a week, that need's starting to change. Well, what do you need now? Well, now we're looking at, we need school supplies at this time, or we need additional cleaning products at this time. So we can start working that word around to be able to get another run ready to come down and drop off more stuff that's actually in need at that point.
Can I add to that? Something to think about as well is also going to vary on where the crisis happens. So say it could be in Florida, it could be North or South Carolina, it could be all the way up north, and we have to be able to adjust to that. Within that time frame, we also need a damage report. How bad is it? Do we still have to wait? We have to have that intel before we can even start moving bodies, because if we can't even get into it, the place, what's the point of trying to deploy? When
Well,
we're
that should all be built
stuck
into
at
the matrix.
Yeah, that's something that we do need to add into that.
Oh, absolutely.
Without a doubt.
And with us having so many groups kind of going down the East Coast, we can always leapfrog supplies.
Yeah.
Yep, you know, we're rolling out of New York. All right, I'll pick it up, meet you in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania brings it to Maryland. Maryland takes it to Virginia. Virginia takes it to North Carolina. North Carolina takes South Carolina, till it hits whatever destination it's going. So that's an easy way that we can really get supplies down there pretty rapidly, is by leapfrogging.
Yeah.
You
Maybe
know.
with an ERAM, we can have designated RPs.
Yes,
That way we have this one centralized location in the state. If me or you can't do it, we know, hey, we can tell this guy, this is where the supplies are gonna be, this is where we can go to get it.
so I will head up the task of creating a matrix,
SOP.
a matrix SOP for when a disaster hits. I'll head that up.
Prior to that, do you
Reality
think-
doctors here.
Hold on a second, go ahead.
You have a doctor?
Go ahead, Lauren.
Go ahead,
So
man.
prior to that, do you think your individual units would be willing to commit to doing a completely off-season collection of perishable or non-perishable goods? Like something in
I've been thinking a little bit
February,
about that.
and just get everybody to do one perishable drive, warehouse it?
One issue.
Lauren,
Okay,
I've been thinking
storage.
about that the
Well,
whole time
There are
here.
solutions to that.
The whole
That's
time
the
we've
main-
been talking about this over the last 2 days, actually. I've been thinking about that. You know, we don't pay dues. We do this as a love for our fellow man, love for our country,
Absolutely.
love for, you know, I love you too, Lauren. Sexy boy. So, why can't we, instead of just dropping everything and say, hey, we need toys, we need canned goods, why don't we say, you know, hey, look, when you come, bring 2 cans of whatever. I'm sure there's 2 cans of food somewhere in your house that are there that you haven't eaten for more than 6 or 8 months. There's 2 cans in your house, 2 cans in your house. And when we create these rally points up and down the East Coast, you end up with 4 pallets, you got 3 pallets, you have 6 pallets, you have 2 pallets, you have a pallet, and then instead of, you know, going from here to here, now we go from all the way around to the point.
To the rally point.
And it's already collected, and it's an ongoing thing, instead of, gosh, it's the week before Christmas, I don't have money for 2 cans of food, I wanna buy a turkey.
Yeah.
You know,
Building a
you're
surplus,
saving in
basically.
advance.
No, I think it's a good idea, especially now, because we know it's gonna go somewhere, and it's gonna go somewhere well before the end of the year. So whatever we would get non-perishable, those expiration dates are gonna be good through, up and through next year, more than likely.
And all the health goods, dry goods, diaper, all, you know,
Yeah,
all that stuff.
Easy.
Yep.
Easy storage.
you know, like I
And
said.
somebody's gonna have to monitor that, you know what I mean? Somebody's gonna have to
Yeah,
monitor
within
those
each
collection
group,
points to make sure
right.
that, you know, you're not sitting, I mean, cause you could be sitting there with a pallet of food that high. You know, it'd be really easy to get lackadaisical and just go, okay, yeah, we've got a pallet of food here, but then all of a sudden something happened, it turns up now you've got a bunch of expired food.
Right.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you guys have done your drives for the disasters, by and large, what did you get the most of? Food or soft good supplies?
Water.
Water.
Well, it was water for
That's
us.
another case of water.
Because I'm thinking, you know, socks, women's, baby, all the stuff that isn't food isn't necessarily the highest donated items, at least
No,
that's all I
it's
saw.
not.
I got that one box, that one guy donated all those school supplies, one person, by the way.
That's awesome.
One person, huge donation. But maybe rather than focusing on perishables, yes, perishables are great, focus on the non-perishable
I mean,
stuff.
sure. Well,
That could really be more helpful, then you don't have to worry about a day coach.
Straight up,
Food.
soap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Soap
Yeah.
got real scarce, man. I'm
All that
talking
stuff.
Hand
laun-
sanitizer.
Yeah, hand
And all-
sanitizer, laundry soap, body wash soap, whatever soap there was, it got really,
Yeah.
you know, out there.
And
So-
there's no drop dead date on that stuff.
Exactly.
That's easy to manage. And then when you do call out for, just say you just call out for food on your fund
That's
drive.
it.
You don't need water, we just need food.
Yep.
We got the other stuff
We've
already.
got all the other stuff already pre-stamped.
All right, so, I guess anybody else have any input on our 3 items that we will be driving ERAM forward with for 2019?
Negative.
Man, we've done a lot. Put together a lot.
All right, with that said, ERAM's goal for 2019 is community. It is community as a whole, as ERAM, it's community as individual units. And of course, y'all know we'll back you up when you make the call.
it's already been proven.
I've got nothing else, gentlemen. Anybody else?
I'm good.
Lauren, didn't you say you had a finisher when we started, or did we do it already?
A little bit later.
A little bit later, okay.
Yeah.
Do we need to do this? Because there's a packet of information here, or is this just for dissemination of information?
That's our SOP we gotta run over later for ERAM.
Okay, because the time frame is pretty tight right now.
16.
I know, you're getting close.
I'm starting to get my Betty White on.
We can go over that, we can go over that later.
Something that we can do with that is actually, you know, I printed it out to give it to everybody, and there's a couple of pieces of blank paper in there. If you see something you like, transfer it there, say this is something that we can really work on, put your name at the top, pass it in, and then we can work off that. If you don't like something, don't put it on the paper. That way it'll save us a lot of time. We won't have to worry about going over every little thing, and then we can build off that list and go from there.
Is anybody familiar
Suggestion?
with, go ahead, George.
About this?
Uh-huh.
Read it over fairly quick, scanned it. This is a long conversation.
What I was just getting ready to recommend is take it home. In a week from today, we submit via email, scan it or whatever, back to Mr. Cody for finalization.
We can pound through it paragraph by paragraph.
And I'll tell you guys, that was stream of consciousness stuff. It just as it came to my mind, I was dictating it to my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's,
So I
chop it,
think-
get it,
Bullet
throw it away.
And we can even have if we have to, do a phone conference.
Well, that's what I was just gonna ask about. Is there,
Talk to you guys again.
I mean, I've done some video, like one-on-one video conferencing with like Skype and whatnot.
Yeah.
Is there a platform out there
Yes.
that allows like multiple people, you know what I mean, multiple people to be
Oh,
in a
yeah.
meeting at once? I
Yeah,
mean,
we'll
Yeah, you
discuss
can
it
fill
tomorrow.
your
Yeah, we're gonna
screen with
discuss
everybody's
that.
face.
Okay.
All right, meeting. According to the baton. We're good.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, gentlemen.